Standards, aptitude, the par excellence. From kindergarten to cap and gown, spotlight on the Maryland Department of Education. In the Know with Phil Hayes starts right now.
Then they snuck out of the woods, and then they ate more houses. Nobody caught them this time, and then they lived happily ever after the end.
Oh, that was awesome, Trey. Okay, as a small
Success starts at the beginning, or in this case, the age of youth. Pilot programs and the like are being developed to educate, cultivate, and enhance the potential of youth in grades K through 12 all over Maryland. That responsibility falls to the Maryland Department of Education, and they do so to high achievement. Even with budgetary constraints and bureaucratic red tape, the Department of Education manages to make incremental strides to exponential results. You're about to meet Dr. Lillian M. Lowery, a seasoned veteran, teacher, principal, administrator. And you're about to find out why she is exactly the right person at the right time. And we're here with Dr. Lillian M. Lowery. She is the State Superintendent of Schools for the Maryland Department of Education. Dr. Lowery, welcome to In the Know.
Thank you.
Let's start with a little bit about your background. How did this all get started for you? How did you end up in the main office, as they say?
Great, thank you. I started as a teacher. I taught middle school and high school English, and came through a pretty traditional route. I was an English department chair in Fairfax County, so I lived in the DC region for over 20 years before going to Delaware as a superintendent of schools at their largest school district, Casino School District, and had to do some pretty aggressive work around reconciling budgets, and as a consequence worked very closely with the General Assembly and the governor. So when the new governor came on board, I was invited by a group of people to apply for Secretary of Education there, and I applied and I was selected, and had to work with a lot of states because we were one of the first states to win Race to the Top grant award, and Maryland came on board shortly thereafter. So I had the opportunity to work closely with people here at the Maryland Department of Education to learn from them, to share. So I had the opportunity to come here, and I took it because I really respect the state and the commitment that the state has to public education.
What have you found have been some of the more challenging aspects of, educating youth in not just Baltimore, but in the entire state of Maryland?
I think the issues that we have here in Maryland are national issues, and the most salient issue is the achievement gap. And it is hard to close the achievement gap because as we work really hard with all of our students, everyone is doing better. So it's kind of like the ship rises with the tide, everyone is rising, but we're not closing that persistent gap. But with the concentration that the state has placed on pre-kindergarten, what happens with children 0 to 5, we believe with the adoption of a Common Core standards, which infuses far more rigor early on. And by the way, children can handle it. It's sometimes the adults who are a little nervous about it. We will start seeing that achievement gap close because we will be exposing children to social, emotional, academic intelligence activities before they even get into kindergarten, and that will help bring everyone in on an even playing field. Right now, over the last 13 years, 13 years ago, in 2001, only 49% of the children in Maryland entering kindergarten were ready to learn. And as of 2014, 83% are ready to learn.
Wow.
So we are doing an excellent job in pre-kindergarten preparation. What we have to do now, K through 12, is maintain that success and do what we need to do appropriately around interventions and strategies to keep everyone strong.
That ties into the next thing I was going to ask. That's a pretty big jump, 49 to 83%. What are these some of the programs that you implemented here?
Oh no, this started in 2000 under Governor Glenn Denning, and it has just gotten stronger by Governor, and Governor O'Malley has infused a lot of funding into kindergarten this year. He also gave money to the state to add 1,600 seats, because right now we have required kindergarten, but pre-kindergarten with our 4-year-olds is only targeted for those students of certain economic statuses.
So over the last 14 years, what are some of the initiatives, some of the programs that the Department of Education has put in place to try to better the environment, if you will, for youth here in the state?
I will say that around pre-kindergarten, the advocacy around it is amazing. We have external partners, nonprofit, individual companies, organizations that do a lot of educating of parents and community members and funders. So that's very helpful, because we have to help create an environment of success for the students, and that depends on the adults. We have also, through Race to the Top funds, because not only did the state win Race to the Top funds for K through 12, the state also won funds for 0 to 5. And so we're incentivizing people in early childhood care and development to go back to school to get their bachelor's degrees, because right now, if kindergarten programs, pre-kindergarten programs are attached to our schools, they have to have bachelor's degrees, but a lot of our private organizations, daycare centers, don't. And so we are really trying to incentivize everyone to be the very best they can be, and to continue to grow and learn so that they can be better with our children. Also, the implementation, pre-K through 12, of the Maryland College and Career Ready Standards is making a huge difference. We can see the shift where children are taking more ownership for their learning. And we are moving to an assessment, a new assessment that is more performance-based, where instead of bubbling in A, B, C, or D, students are being asked to really logically demonstrate why they choose what they choose as the correct answer.
I've read about some of those risk assessments that the Department of Education has in place.
Right.
Here's a good educational thing.
Okay.
I do know that 100 minus 83 is 17.
Right.
So you said that 83% of the students that you have now are, moving forward solidly in all of the various programs and objectives that you have. There still leaves 17%
That's right.
that is at risk of recidivism.
That's right.
How are you all working to try to lower that rate of recidivism so that maybe the entire 17% will join the other 83?
One of the opportunities we had from the United States Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan, is to look at the Elementary and Secondary Education Act in a more flexible way. Before, what we had was something called adequate yearly progress, where we had a benchmark score that every child had to meet, the gifted child, the child with disability, the English language learner. Everyone had to meet the same benchmark regardless of where the child began. What we are allowed to do with the flexibility waiver is assess where the student is performing when he or she enters a particular grade, and then grow that child over the year. So while I may not have the same score that you have. The teacher has to demonstrate that regardless of where I started at the beginning of the school year, there was growth. I learned something and I grew. This way we are customizing education far better than we've ever customized education before. It is individualized to the student. So what we have year over year is the student competing with him or herself. Not the one who sits beside or the one who's in the school down the street, but how was I performing last year, and now how am I performing this year? That growth metric is very individualistic. And so what it causes us to do, both the leaders and the teachers, is to focus on that particular child's individual needs, because we have to close that gap. We have committed as a state that in the next 6 years, and we're into year 3, we will close the achievement gap by 50%. And that 50% depends on the group in which a child actually exists. So if it's students with disabilities, close it by 50%. If it's a child of poverty, close it by 50%. So using digital learning technology to individualize instruction, and focusing on individual students where they are and where we expect them to be, has done a lot to do well for all of our students and our educators to focus the work and really have a data point that we can talk about based on an individual child and not necessarily in the aggregate group.
What have been some of the success stories in particular that, maybe you might want to highlight for our viewers?
If I may just kind of talk about the number one that is done through data quality counts and Ed Week. Maryland is number one in the nation for many reasons. The student success is a part of it, but it is also the way our state funds public education. It is a policy that our General Assembly passes. It is the focus of our governor and administration on creating conducive learning environments through support programs like a digital learning grant opportunity for districts who are doing innovative work. Dual enrollment has been really increased because we know, and this will start to answer your question, that students, especially first generation students who have no idea of college, if they start in high school, so if they're dually enrolled taking a course that counts for both high school and college credit simultaneously, those are students who are more likely not only to go to college, but to finish college, because the possibility is there. They've been exposed to the rigor and the expectations. So that is a great program.
You're in a high-performing state from an educational standpoint. What are some of the ideas that you've brought and implemented in the 2 years that you've been superintendent?
One of the things that I was tasked to do when I came on board, the school board with the Department of Education had just completed writing their strategic plan for world-class students, ensuring that every child gets a world-class education. That's actually our mantra. Every high school student will graduate ready to compete in the global environment. And so the challenges that I've had, I see as opportunities as well, is to implement the Common Core standards that we call the Maryland College and Career Ready Standards. The preparation for doing that began 3 years ago, but it's like most things, until it's actually time and it's going to count, people don't probably implement as robustly as they could. So we've had to really set up protocols where we're sending teams out into the 24 districts, and we have visited all 24 districts. We're visiting classrooms, elementary and secondary, actually looking at the shift as we move from the old standards, beginning this year was the first year of required implementation statewide, to the new standards. How is that going? What are the needs? What are the ways that the Department of Education and the state can continue to be helpful? And what is already going out there that's really going well, best practices that we can collect and share broadly across the state. Let's not reinvent the wheel if we have districts that are doing great work. So after each of those visits, we get a summary review of the teacher's input, what the pros are, what the cons are, and how the department can be more helpful. that has been really great. We were supposed to end those academies last summer, but based on the feedback that we've gotten, we've written a modification, no cost extension to our federal grant. So this summer, we can offer a fourth year of academies, because now that everyone has been all in and they see the need that is there to build out resources, materials, and curricula to align with these standards, we are far more focused as a state. So we're really pleased about that work. And we brought on a new deputy state superintendent and a new assistant state superintendent to lead that work. They joined last year, right after I came. And so they are doing a great job. And one came from being a superintendent of a district, and one came from being a high school principal in a high-performing district. So they know what the needs are firsthand. That has been very helpful in moving this work along. But we are part of a consortium of states that are implementing a new assessment. And I think we were nervous, and I think there were a lot of external partners out there thinking they're never going to pull this off. But we did a field test this year. We did both technology-based field tests and paper and pencil, because we do have to figure out the technology, make sure that everyone has the full capacity of technology needed before we go full bore. And the field test, not only in Maryland, but across the consortium, went exceedingly well. I mean, it surpassed all of our dreams. So we're really excited about the field test. We're waiting to get the feedback from the PARC consortium, and Pearson is the vendor, so that we can make sure that as we plan for full rollout of all students next year, because this year the field test, we just did at least one classroom in every school in the state. Next year, all of our students will be assessed. We feel really good about it. So we're working with the General Assembly and our superintendents, and of course the O'Malley Brown administration, to see how the state can be helpful around the technology, making sure that all the schools have the bandwidth that they need and the kind of technology that they need, not just to put devices in students' hands, but to give speed to the use of the technology within the walls of the school.
I can tell you have a wonderful team, and I can also see that you've got a lot of support behind you, and a lot of people are putting a lot of resources to make these things happen. I know that you've only been here 2 years, and hopefully many, many more, of course.
Right.
What kind of future implementations, and I keep using that word implement and whatever, but what kind of future successes can we look for from your administration as
So one of the things that we're talking about is a statewide conversation with both the administration and our business community are all of the jobs that are available that for which they have no employees in the state. They are having to import employees because of those middle level skills where we haven't prepared our graduates to be ready for that. They're either going off to community or four-year college or university, or they are not as prepared as they should be skill-wise. So one of the areas of focus for us in the state where we're really going to implement in more an abundant way is around career and technical education and STEM. And when we talk about career and technical education and STEM, I hope that people will start seeing that as one, because we're talking about science, technology, engineering, and math, and that's what career and tech is. It is the technology, the engineering, the science, the math skills that are in the areas of health professionals, the areas of technology, the areas of building what we believe, we hope to be a more robust construction, manufacturing environment where people can go and get great jobs and make decent wages and raise families like we've done before. We want to make sure that those children have the skills that employers need to fill some of these jobs that are available.
Wow. I think that's absolutely wonderful.
Yes.
Dr. Lillian M. Lowery, she's the State Superintendent of Schools for the Maryland Department of Education. Much success to you in the future.
Thank
It sounds
you.
like you've got a good start.
Thank you.
You have a lot of momentum going for you. I know it's going to be absolutely wonderful. This is a lot to be proud of. You really do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time that you've given us
I
today.
appreciate your putting us in the know.
Thank you. I like that. We'll be right back with more In the Know in just a moment. Before we go any further, I'd like to acknowledge the faculty and staff of Marley Elementary School located in Glen Burnie, Maryland, and their principal, Nina Lattimore, for their invaluable assistance in the making of this video. Dr. Lillian Lowery has long-range, forward-thinking plans to propel the Department of Education to higher levels with momentum on their side. The limits to which they can go are infinitesimal. The greatest benefit of these, the schools, teachers, and indeed the youth who will pass through the proverbial hallowed halls to become productive citizens in their own right. The Maryland Department of Education, led by Dr. Lillian M. Lowery, no less than success. I'm Phil Hayes, and you're in the know. We'll see you next time.